I always thought I was a pretty grounded person. I worked hard, paid my bills on time, and stayed in my lane. I wasn't the type to take risks, especially not the kind that blurred lines between personal and professional. But then came the favor. I had been working as an executive assistant at a high-end marketing firm for almost 2 years. My boss, Daniel Whitmore, was well known in the industry, sharp, confident, intimidating. The kind of man who walked into a room and everyone stood a little straighter. He wasn't rude exactly, just calculating. Every word, every gesture, always had a purpose. He barely noticed most of us unless something needed to be fixed immediately. I was fine with that. I liked staying under the radar. Less drama, less risk. Until one Friday evening, he called me into his office. Everyone else had already left for the weekend. I hesitated for a second. It was nearly PM and I was exhausted, but I walked in, notebook in hand, assuming he needed help rearranging his schedule or following up on a last-minute client request. He closed the door behind me. That never happened. "Have a seat," he said, his tone neutral. He sat across from me, not behind his usual desk. I felt my stomach tighten. "I have a personal favor to ask," he began. "And before you say anything, yes, I'll pay you generously." He wasn't smiling. He wasn't joking. My heart started to pound. A million scenarios flew through my mind. Illegal? Shady? Inappropriate? He leaned forward slightly. "I need someone I can trust. Someone discreet. I'm hosting a private event tomorrow night. Important people. I need someone to play the part of a partner." I blinked. Partner? A girlfriend? Fiancé, technically. Just for the night? I stared at him. Was this a joke? Some bizarre company loyalty test? "It's a personal matter," he continued, sensing my hesitation. "I'll pay you $5,000. You just need to show up, smile, hold my hand, make small talk. Dress will be provided. No weird expectations, I promise. You'll be in and out by midnight." $5,000. That was 2 months of rent. I should have said no, I knew that. But all I could think about was the student loans piling up, the car repairs I couldn't afford, and the guilt of calling my mom last week to borrow money again. So I said yes. I told myself it was just one night. Just pretend. Just money. But I had no idea what I was really agreeing to. Saturday came faster than I expected. I spent most of the day pacing around my apartment, trying to convince myself that this was just a gig. Like acting. No big deal. I even Googled how to act like someone's fiancé without looking like a complete idiot. Around PM, a courier knocked on my door with a large garment bag and a smaller box labeled shoes. Inside was a sleek, deep navy gown that looked like it belonged on the red carpet. Elegant, tasteful, and definitely expensive. The shoes matched perfectly, and even the earrings were included. Everything fit like it had been tailored just for me. By 6:45, a black car pulled up outside my building. The driver nodded when I gave him my name and opened the door. No words. Just smooth service. This was Daniel's world, sharp edges, quiet luxury, and unspoken rules. The event was being held in an exclusive rooftop venue overlooking the city skyline. I recognized a few faces from magazine covers and business news profiles. CEOs, politicians, influencers. Everyone was polished and poised, dripping in quiet money. And then I saw him, Daniel. He was dressed in a classic black tuxedo, not a single wrinkle or hair out of place. When he saw me, he smiled, not his usual polite smirk, but something softer, something that almost felt real. "You look stunning," he said as he offered his arm. "Ready?" No, but I nodded anyway. The night unfolded like a dream or a well-rehearsed lie. Daniel introduced me to everyone as my fiancée, Elise. I shook hands, made small talk, laughed at jokes I didn't fully understand. He kept his hand gently on my back, guided me through conversations, whispered little comments in my ear to make me laugh, and for a while, I forgot this wasn't real. We danced once. Just once. A slow song. One of those romantic jazz numbers that plays in the background of movies right before something big happens. I remember how warm his hand felt on my waist, how close he pulled me, how natural it all felt. But there was a moment, just a flicker, when I caught his expression as he looked across the room. It changed, like a mask slipping. He stiffened. His grip on me tightened ever so slightly, and when I turned my head to follow his gaze, I saw a woman watching us. She was older, elegant, and her eyes were locked on Daniel with something between anger and sorrow. He smiled tightly and whispered in my ear, "Don't say a word. Just follow my lead." I did, but the entire energy shifted after that. He introduced me to fewer people, kept glancing over his shoulder. His charm dimmed, like someone had turned the lights down a notch. Who was she? And why did I suddenly feel like I was in way over my head? The ride back to Daniel's place was quiet, too quiet. He stared out the window most of the time, jaw tight, fingers drumming restlessly against his leg. I debated breaking the silence, asking about the woman at the party, but something told me not to. I wasn't just Elise anymore. I was Elise, the Fiancee, and that came with a role I hadn't fully understood until now. When we arrived at his penthouse, he poured himself a drink without offering me one. Then he finally said, "That woman tonight, she's someone I used to know. The words hung in the air like smoke. I sat on the edge of the velvet couch, still in my gown, the zipper digging into my spine. It seemed like more than that. He glanced at me, and for a brief second, I saw the wall crack. She was my mother's best friend, and my father's mistress. Oh, that explained the look in her eyes, not anger at him, pity for me. Daniel sat down across from me and took a long sip of his drink. "You did well tonight. Thank you." I waited for him to say more. He didn't. "So, that's it?" He looked at me, eyebrows raised. "That's what you were paid for." I felt the shift. Cold, transactional. "But I need you again." I blinked. "Again?" He nodded casually. "There's a charity event next weekend. Same crowd, even more press. I need the illusion to last a little longer." "Why?" I asked. "What's really going on, Daniel?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stood up, walked to a drawer, and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to me. I opened it. Cash. A lot more than last time. "This is double," I said quietly. He met my gaze. "Because the stakes are higher now." I should have walked out. I should have said no, torn off that perfect dress, and never looked back. But the truth? I didn't, because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was part of something. Even if it was fake, even if it was complicated. And the money? It wasn't just life-changing. It was freedom in an envelope. So I nodded. "I'll be there." He smiled that same controlled, polished smile and said, "Good. You're playing the part beautifully." But as I left his penthouse that night, my heart was pounding for all the wrong reasons, because I realized something. This wasn't about helping a lonely man impress his friends anymore. It was about control, and I had just agreed to hand mine over for the second time. The charity gala was nothing short of a spectacle. Crystal chandeliers, champagne waterfalls, and violins playing something that sounded expensive. I walked in on Daniel's arm, my smile flawless, my posture perfect, everything a real Fiancee should be. But inside, I was unraveling. I had played along twice now, and it was becoming harder to tell where the performance ended. And I began. This time, people whispered differently. Some glanced at me with envy, others with suspicion. And Daniel? He was more polished than ever, laughing with donors, trading smiles with women who looked like they'd stepped off the pages of fashion magazines. I stood beside him like a trophy, and that's when I saw her again. The woman from the first party. She approached slowly, wine in hand, eyes locked on mine. "Elise, was it?" she asked. I nodded, careful not to break character. She leaned in. "Does he pay you in cash or favors?" My heart thudded. "Excuse me?" She smiled tightly. "He offered me the same arrangement once. I declined." "You're braver than I was." And with that, she vanished into the crowd, leaving me with a knot in my throat and questions that tasted like regret. Later that night, Daniel and I stood on the rooftop balcony, the city lights below us like scattered stars. "You've done well," he said, sipping his drink. "They all believe it now." I turned to him. "Believe what, Daniel? That you're in love? That we're planning a wedding?" He looked at me, then really looked, and for the first time, I saw something vulnerable behind the cool exterior. "My father is dying," he said. "He made it clear in his will. No inheritance unless I'm married." I blinked. "So this was about money the whole time?" He nodded slowly. "Not just money. Control. My family. They need to see I've changed. That I'm stable. And I was your proof." He didn't deny it. I took a deep breath. "So what now? Do I get another envelope? Another favor?" Daniel was silent for a long time. Then softly, he said, "No, no more favors." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. I froze. He opened it. A ring. Real, beautiful, timeless. "This time," he said, "it's not pretend. If you'll have me." I stared at him, and I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was tragic. "I was your employee," I said. "Not your fiancé, not your therapist, and definitely not your solution." He didn't move. "I accepted the favor, Daniel, twice, but I won't become the lie you need to live." And with that, I turned and walked away. No cash, no ring, no plan, just freedom. Real, terrifying, beautiful freedom. I didn't look back. Not when I reached the elevator. Not when I stepped into the street. The night air was sharp, and I welcomed it. For the first time in a long time, I was breathing. On my own, without permission, without payment, without pretending. I thought Daniel would chase after me, call, text, try to turn it around, but he didn't. Instead, he disappeared into silence. A week passed. Then too, I returned to work like nothing had happened. Not that it was easy. Walking into that office felt like stepping onto a stage with no script. But Daniel wasn't there. Rumors said he took a sudden leave of absence. Some said it was family. Some said burnout. No one really knew. And I didn't correct them, because for once, I wasn't part of the performance anymore. I buried myself in work. My inbox filled up with compliments from clients, from colleagues. I wasn't just Daniel's assistant anymore. I had proven myself, earned respect. Quietly, but firmly, I started to rise. 6 months later, I got a promotion. New role, new salary, a fresh start without strings. I never told anyone what happened between us. Not my friends, not my new boss, not even my fiancé. Yes, I met someone else. Someone who asked my real name before anything else. Someone who saw me as a person, not a solution. He asked once if I had any secrets. I smiled and said, "Just one." I kept that part of my life locked away. Not out of shame, but because some stories aren't meant to be shared. They're meant to teach. As for Daniel, I saw him once, almost a year later, in a cafe of all places. He looked older, tired, alone. He caught my eye across the room and nodded. A silent acknowledgement, no words, just something like peace. I never found out if he got the inheritance, or if he ever married, but I hope he learned. I hope he understood that love isn't something you hire, manipulate, or rehearse. It has to be earned, chosen, felt. And me? I learned that dignity costs more than any envelope full of money. That pretending to be loved is lonelier than being alone. And that walking away even when it hurts is sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do. I kept the first envelope. It's in a drawer, unopened, a reminder of what I gave up, of what I gained, because in the end, I wasn't paid to love. I was paid to lie, but I chose to live instead, and that made all the difference.